Of the things which are in our power and not in our power, of all the faculties, you will find not one which is capable of contemplating itself, and consequently not capable either of approving or disapproving. How far does grammatic art possess the contemplating power? As far as forming a judgment about what is written and spoken. And how far music? As far as judging about melody. Does either of them then contemplate itself? By no means. But when you must write something to your friend, grammar will tell you what words you should write, but whether you should write or not, grammar will not tell you. And so it is with music as to musical sounds, but whether you should sing at the present time and play on the lute, or do neither, music will not tell you. What faculty then will tell you? That which contemplates both itself and all other things. What is this faculty? The rational faculty, for this is the only faculty that we have received which examines itself, what it is, and what power it has, and what is the value of this gift, and examines all other faculties. For what else is there that which tells us that golden things are beautiful? For they do not say so themselves. Evidently, it is the faculty which is capable of judging of appearances. What else judges of music, grammar, and the other faculties, proves their use, and points out the occasions for using them? Nothing else. What then should a man have in readiness in such circumstances? What else than this? What is mine, and what is not mine? And what is permitted to me, and what is not permitted to me? I must die. Must I then die lamenting? I must be put in chains. Must I then also lament? I must go into exile. Does any man then hinder me from going with smiles and cheerfulness and contentment? Tell me the secret which you possess. I will not, for this is in my power. But I will put you in chains. Man, what are you talking about? Me in chains? You may fetter my leg, but my will not even Zeus can overpower. I will throw you into prison. My poor body, you mean? I will cut your head off. When then have I told you that my head alone should not be cut off? These are the things which philosophers should meditate on, which they should write daily, in which they should exercise themselves. What then did Agrippinus say? He said, I am not a hindrance to myself. When it was reported to him that his trial was going on in the Senate, he said, I hope it may turn out well, but it is the 5th hour of the day. This was the time when he was used to exercise himself and to take the cold bath. Let us go and take our exercise. After he had taken his exercise, one comes and tells him, You have been condemned. To banishment, he replies, or to death? To banishment. What about my property? It is not taken from you. Let us go to Aricia then, he said, and dine. How a man on every occasion can maintain his proper character. To the rational animal only is the irrational intolerable, but that which is rational is tolerable. Blows are not naturally intolerable. How is that? See how the Lacedaemonians endure whipping when they have learned that whipping is consistent with reason. To hang yourself is not intolerable. When then you have the opinion that it is rational, you go and hang yourself. In short, if we observe, we shall find that the animal man is pained by nothing so much as by that which is irrational, and on the contrary, attracted to nothing so much as to that which is rational. Only consider at what price you sell your own will, if for no other reason, at least for this, that you sell it for not a small sum. But that which is great and superior perhaps belongs to Socrates and such are like him. Why then, if we are naturally such, are not a very great number of us like him? Is it true then that all horses become swift, that all dogs are skilled in tracking footprints? What then? Since I am naturally dull, shall I, for this reason, take no pains? I hope not. Epictetus is not superior to Socrates, but if he is not inferior, this is enough for me, for I shall never be a Milo. And yet I do not neglect my body, nor shall become a Croesus, yet I do not neglect my property, nor, in a word, do we neglect looking after anything because we despair of reaching to the highest degree. How a man should proceed from the principle of God being the Father of all men to the rest. If a man should be able to assent to this doctrine as he ought, that we are all sprung from God in a special manner, and that God is the Father both of men and of gods, I suppose that he would never have any ignoble or mean thought about himself. But if Caesar the emperor should adopt you, no one could endure your arrogance. And if you know that you are the son of Zeus, will you not be elated? Yet we do not so, but since these two things are mingled in the generation of man, body in common with animals, and reason and intelligence in common with the gods, many incline to this kinship, which is miserable and mortal, and some few to that which is divine and happy. Since then it is of necessity that every man uses everything according to the opinion of which he has about it. Those, the few, who think that they are formed for fidelity and modesty, and a sure use of appearances, have no mean or ignoble thoughts about themselves. But with the many it is quite the contrary, for they say, what am I? A poor, miserable man, with my wretched bit of flesh? Wretched indeed, but you possess something better than your bit of flesh. Why then do you neglect that which is better, and why do you attach yourself to this? Through this kinship with the flesh, some of us inclining it to become like wolves, faithless and treacherous and mischievous. Some become like lions, savage and bestial and untamed. But the greater part of us become foxes and other worse animals. For what else is a slanderer and malignant man than a fox, or some other more wretched or meaner animal? See then and take care that you do not become some of these miserable things. Of progress or improvement. He who is making progress, having learned from philosophers that desire means the desire of good things, and aversion means aversion from bad things. Having learned too that happiness and tranquility are not attainable by man otherwise than by not failing to obtain what he desires, and not failing into that which he should avoid. Such a man takes from himself desire altogether and confers it, but he employs his aversion only on things which are dependent on his will. For if he attempts to avoid anything independent of his will, he knows that sometimes he will fall in with something which he wishes to avoid, and he will be unhappy. Now, if virtue promises good fortune and tranquility and happiness, certainly also the progress toward virtue is progress toward each of these things. For it is always true that to whatever point the perfecting of anything leads us, progress is an approach towards this point. How then do we admit that virtue is such as I have said, and yet seek progress in other things and make a display of it? What is a product of virtue? Tranquility. Who then makes improvement? Is it he who has read many books of Chrysippus? But does virtue consist in having understood Chrysippus? If this is so, progress is clearly nothing else than knowing a great deal of Chrysippus. But now we admit that virtue produces one thing, and we declare that approaching near to it is another thing, namely progress or improvement. Such a person, says one, is already able to read Chrysippus by himself. Indeed, sir, you are making great progress. What kind of progress? But why do you mock the man? Why do you draw him away from the perception of his own misfortunes? Will you not show him the effect of virtue that he may learn where to look for improvement? Seek it there, wretch, where your work lies. And where is your work? In desire and in aversion, that you may not be disappointed in your desire, and that you may not fall into that which you would avoid in your pursuit and avoiding, that you commit no error in assent and suspicion of assent, that you be not deceived. The first things, and the most necessary, are those which I have named. But if with trembling and lamentation you seek not to fall into that which you avoid, tell me how you are improving. Do you then show me your improvement in these things? If I were talking to an athlete, I should say, show me your shoulders, and then he might say, here are my halters. You and your halters look to that. I should reply, I wish to see the effect of the halters. So when you say, take the treatise on the active powers, and see how I studied it, I reply, slave, I'm not inquiring about this, but how you exercise pursuit and avoidance, desire and aversion, how you design and purpose and prepare yourself, whether conformably to nature or not. If conformably, give me evidence of this, and I will say that you're making progress. But if not conformably, be gone, and not only expound your books, but write such books yourself. And what will you gain by it? Do you not know that the whole book consists of only 5 denarii? Doesn't the expounder seem to be worth more than 5 denarii? Never then look for the matter itself in one place and progress towards it in another. Where then is progress, if any of you, withdrawing himself from externals, turns to his own will, to exercise it and to improve it by labor, so as to make it conformable to nature, elevated, free, unrestrained, unimpeded, faithful, modest, and if he has learned that he who desires or avoids the things which are not in his power can neither be faithful nor free, but of necessity he must change with them and be tossed about them with them as in a tempest, and of necessity must subject himself to others who have the power to procure or prevent what lie desires or would avoid. Finally, when he rises in the morning, if he observes and keeps these rules, bathes as a man of fidelity, eats as a modest man, and in like manner, if in every matter that occurs he works out his chief principles, as the runner does with reference to running, and the trainer of the voice with reference to the voice, this is the man who truly makes progress, and this is the man who has not traveled in vain. But if he has strained his efforts to the practice of reading books, and labors only at this, and has traveled for this, I tell him to return home immediately, and not to neglect his affairs there. For this which he has traveled is nothing, but the other thing is something, to study how a man can rid his life of lamentation and groaning, and saying, Woe to me, and wretched that I am, and rid also of misfortune and disappointment, and to learn what death is, and exile, and prison, and poison, that he may be able to say when he is in fetters, Dear Crito, if it is the will of the gods that it be so, let it be so, and not to say, Wretched I am I, an old man, have I kept my gray hairs for this? Who is it that speaks thus? Do you think that I shall name some of them men of no repute and of low condition? Does not Priam say this? Does not Oedipus say this? Nay, all kings say it. For what else is tragedy than the perturbations of men who value externals exhibited in this kind of poetry? But if a man must learn by fiction that no external things which are independent of the will concern us, for my part I should like this fiction, by the aid of which I should live happily and undisturbed. But you must consider for yourselves what you wish. What then does Chrysippus teach us? The reply is to know that these things are not false, from which happiness comes and tranquillity arises. Take my books, and you will learn how true and conformable to nature are the things which make me free from perturbations. O great good fortune, O the great benefactor who points out the way. To Triptolemus all men have erected temples and altars, because he gave us food by cultivation. But to him who discovered truth and brought it to light and communicated it to all, not the truth which shows us how to live, but how to live well. Who of you for this reason has built an altar or temple, or has dedicated a statue, or who worships God for this? Because the gods have given the vine or wheat, we sacrifice to them. But because they have produced in the human mind that fruit by which they designed to show us the truth which relates to happiness, shall we not thank God for this? Against the academics. If a man, said Epictetus, opposes evident truths, it is not easy to find arguments by which we shall make him change his opinion. But this does not arise either from the man's strength or the teacher's weakness. For when the man, though he has been confuted, is hardened like a stone, how shall we then be able to deal with him by argument? Now there are two kinds of hardenings, one of the understanding, the other of the sense of shame. When a man is resolved not to assent to what is manifest, nor to desist from contradictions, most of us are afraid of mortification of the body, and would contrive all means to avoid such a thing. But we care not about the soul's mortification. And indeed, with regard to the soul, if a man be in such a state as not to apprehend anything, or understand at all, we think that he is in a bad condition. But if the sense of shame and modesty are deadened, this we call even power. Of providence. From everything which is or happens in the world, it is easy to praise providence. If a man possesses these qualities, the faculty of seeing what belongs and happens to all persons and things, and a grateful disposition. If he does not possess these two qualities, one man will not see the use of things which are and which happen. Another will not be thankful for them, even if he does know them. If God has made colors, but had not made the faculty of seeing them, what would have been their use? None at all. On the other hand, if he had made the faculty of vision, but had not made objects such as to fall under the faculty, what in that case also would have been the use of it? None at all. Well, suppose that he had made both, but had not made light. In that case also they would have been of no use. Who is it then who has fitted this to that, and that to this? What then are these things done in us only? Many indeed in us only, of which the rational animal had peculiar need. But you will find many common to us with irrational animals. Do they then understand what is done? By no means. For use is one thing, and understanding is another. God had need of irrational animals to make use of appearances. But of us to understand the use of appearances, it is therefore enough for them to eat and drink, and to copulate, and to do all the other things which they severally do. But for us, to whom he has given also the intellectual faculty, these things are not sufficient, for unless we act in a properly and orderly manner, and conformably to the nature and constitution of each thing, we shall never attain our true end. For where the constitutions of living beings are different, there also the acts and the ends are different. In those animals, then, whose constitution is adapted only to use, and use alone is enough. But in an animal, which has also the power of understanding the use, unless there be the due exercise of the understanding, he will never attain his proper end. Well, then God constitutes every animal, one to be eaten, another to serve for agriculture, another to supply cheese, and another for some like use. For which purposes what need is there to understand appearances, and to be able to distinguish them? But God has introduced man to be a spectator of God and of his works, and not only a spectator of them, but an interpreter. For this reason it is shameful for man to begin and to end where irrational animals do, but rather he ought to begin where they begin, and to end where nature ends in us, and nature ends in contemplation and understanding, and in a way of life conformable to nature. Take care then not to die without having been spectators of these things. But you take a journey to Olympia to see the work of Phidias, and all of you think it is a misfortune to die without having seen such things. But when there is no need to take a journey, and where a man is, there he has the works of God before him. Will you not desire to see and understand them? Will you not perceive either what you are, or what you were born for, or what this is for which you have received the faculty of sight? But you may say, there are some things disagreeable and troublesome in life, and there are none in Olympia. Are you not scorched? Are you not pressed by a crowd? Are you not without comfortable means of bathing? Are you not wet when it rains? Have you not abundance of noise, clamor, and other disagreeable things? But I suppose that settling all these things off against the magnificence of this spectacle, you bear and endure. Have you not received manliness? Have you not received endurance? And why do I trouble myself about anything that can happen? If I possess greatness of the soul, what shall distract my mind, or disturb me, or appear painful? Shall I not use the power for the purposes for which I received it? Shall I grieve and lament over what happens? Come then, do you also, having observed these things, look to the faculties which you have? And when you have looked at them, say, bring now, O Zeus, any difficulty that thou pleasest. For I have means given to me by thee, and powers for honoring myself through the things which happen. You do not so, but you sit still, trembling for fear that some things will happen, and weeping and lamenting, and groaning for what does happen. Then you blame the gods. For what is the consequence of such meanness of spirit but impiety? Yet God has not only given us these faculties by which we shall be able to bear everything that happens without being depressed or broken by it, but like a good king and a true father, he has given us these faculties free from hindrance, subject to no compulsion, unimpeded, and has put them entirely in our own power, without even having reserved to himself any power of hindering or impeding. You, who have received these powers free and as your own, use them not. You do not even see what you have received. And from whom? Some of you being blind to the giver, not even acknowledging your benefactor, and others, through meanness of spirit, betaking yourselves to fault-finding and making charges against God. Yet I will show to you that you have powers and means for greatness of soul and manliness. But what powers you have for finding fault, making accusations, do you show me? How from the fact that we are kin to a god may a man proceed to the consequences? I indeed think that the old man ought to be sitting here, not to contrive how you may have no mean thoughts, nor mean and ignoble talk about yourselves, but to take care that there not be among us any young men of such a mind, that when they have recognized their kinship to God, and that we are fettered by these bounds, the body, I mean, and its possessions, and whatever else on account of them is necessary to us for the economy and commerce of life, they should intend to throw off these things, as if they were burdens painful and intolerable, and to depart to their kinsmen. But this is the labor that your teacher and instructor ought to be employed upon. If he really were what he should be, you should come to him and say, Epictetus, we can no longer endure being bound to this poor body, and feeding it, and giving it drink and rest, and cleaning it, and for the sake of the body, complying with the wishes of these and those. Are not these things indifferent and nothing to us, and is not death no evil? And are we not in a manner kinsmen to God? Did we not come from him? Allow us to depart to the place from which we came. Allow us to be released at last from these bonds by which we are bound and weighed down. Here there are robbers and thieves in courts of justice, and those who are named tyrants, and think that they have some power over us by means of the body and its possessions. Permit us to show them that they have no power over any man. And I, on my part, would say, friends, wait for God, when he shall give the signal and release you from this service. Then go to him. But for the present, endure to dwell in this place where he has put you. Short indeed is this time of your dwelling here, and easy to bear for those who are so disposed. For what tyrant, or what thief, or what courts of justice are formidable to those who have thus considered as things of no value the body and the possessions of the body? Wait then, do not depart without a reason. Of contentment. With respect to gods, there are some who say that a divine being does not exist. Others say that it exists but is inactive and careless, and takes no forethought about anything. A third class say that such a being exists and exercises forethought, but only about great things and heavenly things, and about nothing of the earth. A fourth class say the divine being exercises forethought both about things of the earth and heavenly things, but in a general way only, and not about things separately. There is a fifth class to whom Ulysses and Socrates belong, who say, I move not without thy knowledge. Iliad. Before all the things, then, it is necessary to inquire about each of these opinions, whether it is affirmed truly or not truly. For if there are no gods, how is it our proper end to follow them? And if they exist but take no care of anything, in this case also how will it be right to follow them? But if indeed they do exist and look after things, still, if there is nothing communicated from them to men, nor in fact to myself, how even so is it right to follow them? The wise and good man, then, after considering all these things, submits his own mind to him who administers the whole, as good as citizens do the law of the state. He who is receiving instruction ought to come to be instructed with this intention. How shall I follow the gods in all things? How shall I be contented with the divine administration? And how can I become free? For he is free to whom everything happens according to his will, and whom no man can hinder. What then is freedom? Madness? Certainly not, for madness and freedom do not consist. But you say, I would have everything result just as I like, and in whatever way I like. You are mad, you are beside yourself. Do you not know that freedom is a noble and valuable thing? But for me, inconsiderately to wish for things to happen as I inconsiderately like, this appears to be not only noble, but even most base. For how do we proceed in the matter of writing? Do I wish to write the name of Dion as I chose? No, but I am taught to choose to write it as it ought to be written. And how with respect to music? In the same manner, and one universally in every art or science, just the same. If it were not so, it would be of no value to know anything, and if knowledge were adapted to every man's whim. Is it then in this alone, in this which is the greatest and chief thing? I mean freedom, that I am permitted to will inconsiderately? By no means, but to be instructed is this, to learn to wish that everything may happen as it does. And how does things happen? As the disposer has disposed them, and he has appointed summer and winter, and abundance and scarcity, and virtue and vice, and all such opposites for the harmony of the whole, to each of us he has given a body, and parts of the body, and possessions and companions. What then remains, or what method is discovered of holding commerce with them? Is there such a method by which they shall do what seems fit to them, and we not the less shall be in a mood which is conformable to nature? But you are unwilling to endure, and are discontented, and if you are alone, and you call it solitude, you are with men, you call them knaves and robbers. You find fault with your own parents and children and brothers and neighbors. But you ought, when you are alone, to call this condition by the name of tranquility and freedom, to think yourself like the gods. When you are with many, you ought not to call it crowd, nor trouble, nor uneasiness, but festival and assembly, and so accept all contentedly. What then is the punishment of those who do not accept? It is to be what they are. Is any person dissatisfied with being alone? Let him be alone. Is a man dissatisfied with his parents? Let him be a bad son and lament. Is he dissatisfied with his children? Let him be a bad father. Cast him into prison. What prison? Where he is already, for he is there against his will. And where a man is against his will, therefore he is in prison. So Socrates was not in prison, for he was there willingly. Must my leg then be lamed? Wretch, do you then on the account of one poor leg find fault with the world? Will you not willingly surrender it for the whole? Will you not withdraw from it? Will you not gladly part with it to him who gave it? And will you be vexed and discontented with the things established by Zeus, which he, with the Morae, who were present and spinning the thread of your generation, defined and put it in order? Know you not how small a part you are compared with the whole? I mean with respect to the body, for as to intelligence you are not inferior to the gods, nor less. For the magnitude of intelligence is not measured by length, nor yet by height, but by thoughts. How everything may be done acceptably to the gods. When someone asked, how may a man eat acceptably to the gods, he answered, if he can eat justly and contentedly, and with equanimity and temperately and orderly, will it not also be acceptable to the gods? But when you have asked for warm water, and the slave has not heard, or if he did hear but has brought only tepid water, or he is not even found to be in his house, then not to be vexed or to burst with passion, is not this acceptable to the gods? How then shall a man endure with your brother? Then shall a man endure such persons as his slave? Slave yourself, will you not bear with your own brother, who has Zeus for his progenitor, and is like a son from the same seeds and of the same descent from above? But if you've been put in any such higher place, will you immediately make yourself a tyrant? Will you not remember who you are and whom you rule? That they are kinsmen, that they are brethren by nature, that they are offspring of Zeus. But I have purchased them, and they have not purchased me. Do you see in what direction you are looking? That it is towards the earth, towards the pit, that it is towards these wretched laws of dead men? But towards the laws of gods you are not looking. What philosophy promises? When a man was consulting him how he should persuade his brother to cease being angry with him, Epictetus replied, philosophy does not propose to secure for man any external thing. If it did, or if it were not, as I say, philosophy would be allowing something which is not within its providence. For as the carpenter's material is wood, and that of the statuary is copper, so the matter of the art of living is each man's life. When then is my brother's? That again belongs to his own art. But with respect to yours, it is one of external things, like a piece of land, like health, like reputation. But philosophy promises none of these. In every circumstance I will maintain, she says, the governing part conformable to nature. Whose governing part? His, in whom I am, she says. How then shall my brother cease to be angry with me? Bring him to me and I will tell him, but I have nothing to say to you about his anger. When the man who was consulting him said, I seek to know this, how, even if my brother is not reconciled to me, shall I maintain myself in a state conformable to nature? Nothing great, said Epictetus, is produced suddenly, since not even the grape or the fig is. If you say to me now that you want a fig, I will answer to you that it requires time. Let it flower first, then put forth fruit, then ripen. Is then the fruit of a fig tree not perfected suddenly and in 1 hour? Would you possess the fruit of a man's mind so short a time and so easily? Do not expect it, even if I tell you. That we ought not to be angry with the errors of others. Ought not, then, this robber and this adulterer to be destroyed? By no means say so, but speak rather in this way. This man who has been mistaken and deceived about the most important things, and blinded, not in the faculty of vision, which distinguishes white and black, but in the faculty which distinguishes good and bad, should we not destroy him? If you speak thus, you will see how inhuman this is which you say. And that is just as if you would say, ought we not to destroy this blind and deaf man? But if the greatest harm is the privation of the greatest things, and the greatest thing in every man is the will or choice such as it ought to be, and a man is deprived of this will, why are you also angry with him? Man, you ought not to be affected contrary to nature by the bad things of another. Pity him rather, drop this readiness to be offended and to hate, and these words which the many utter, these accursed and odious fellows. How have you been made so wise at once, and how are you so peevish? Why then are we angry? Is it because we value so much the things of which these men rob us? Do not admire your clothes, then you will not be angry with the thief. Consider this matter thus. You have fine clothes, your neighbor has not. You have a window. You wish to air the clothes. The thief does not know wherein man's good consists, but he thinks that it consists in having fine clothes, the very thing which you also think. Must you not then come and take them away? When you show a cake to greedy persons and swallow it all yourself, do you expect them not to snatch it from you? Do not provoke them. Do not have a window. Do not air your clothes. I also lately had an iron lamp placed by the side of my household gods. Hearing a noise at the door, I ran down and found that the lamp had been carried off. I reflected that he who had taken the lamp had done nothing strange. What then? Tomorrow, I said, you will find an earthen lamp, for man only loses that which he has. I have lost my garment. The reason is that you had a garment. I have a pain in my head. Have you any pain in your horns? Why then are you troubled? For we only lose those things. We have only pains about those things which we possess. But the tyrant will chain, what? The leg. He will take away, what? The neck. What then he will not chain and take away? The will. This is why the ancients taught the maxim, know thyself. Therefore we ought to exercise ourselves in small things, and beginning with them, to proceed to the greater. I have pain in the head. Do not say, alas. I have pain in the ear. Do not say, alas. And I do not say that you are not allowed to groan, but do not groan inwardly. And if your slave is slow in bringing a bandage, do not cry out and torment yourself and say, everybody hates me. For who would not hate such a man? For the future, relying on these opinions, rock about upright, free, not trusting to the size of your body as an athlete. For a man ought not to be invincible in the way that an ass is. How we should behave to tyrants. If a man possesses any superiority, or thinks that he does when he does not, such a man, if he is uninstructed, will of necessity be puffed up through it. For instance, the tyrant says, I am a master of all, and what can you do for me? Can you give me a desire which shall have no hindrance? How can you? Have you the infallible power of avoiding what you would avoid? Have you the power of moving towards an object without error? And how do you possess this power? Come, when you are in a ship, do you trust to yourself or to the helmsman? And when you are in a chariot, to whom do you trust but to the driver? And how is it in all other arts? Just the same. In what then lies your power? All men pay respect to me. Well, I also pay respect to my platter, and I wash it and wipe it. And for the sake of my oil flask, I drive a peg into the wall. Well then, are these things superior to me? No, but they supply some of my wants, and for this reason I take care of them. Well, do I not attend to my ass? Do I not wash his feet? Do I not clean him? Do you not know that every man has regard to himself, and to you just the same as he regard to his ass? For who has regard to you as a man? Show me, who wishes to become like you? Who imitates you as he imitates Socrates? But I can cut off your head. You say right. I had forgotten that I must have regard to you, as I would to a fever in the bile, and raise an altar to you, as there is at Rome an altar to fever. What is it then that guards and disturbs and terrifies the multitude? Is it the tyrant and his guards? I hope that it is not so. It is not possible that that is what by nature free can be disturbed by anything else or hindered by any other thing than itself. But it is a man's own opinions which disturb him. For when the tyrant says to a man, I will chain your leg, he who values his leg says, do not, have pity. But he who values his own will says, if it appears more advantage to you, chain it. Do you not care? I do not care. I will show you that I am master. You cannot do that. Zeus has set me free. Do you think that he intended to allow his own son to be enslaved? But you are master of my carcass. Take it. So when you approach me, you have no regard to me. No, but I have regard to myself. And if you wish me to say that I have regard to you also, I will tell you that I have the same regard to you that I have to my pipkin. What then? What an absurd notions about things independent of our will, as if they were good and bad, lie at the bottom of our opinions. We must of necessity pay regard to tyrants. For I wish that men would pay regard to tyrants only, and not also to the bedchambermen. How is it the man becomes all at once wise when Caesar has made him superintendent of the close stool? How is it that we say immediately, Felicion spoke sensibly to me? I wish he were ejected from the bedchamber, that he might again appear to you to be a fool. Has a man been exalted to the tribuneship? All who meet him offer their congratulations. One kisses his eyes, another the neck, and the slaves kiss his hands. He goes to his house. He finds torches lighted. He ascends the Capitol. He offers a sacrifice on the occasion. Now whoever sacrificed for having good desires, for having acted conformably to nature, for in fact we thank the gods for those things in which we place our good. A person was talking to me today about the priesthood of Augustus. I say to him, Man, let the thing alone. You will spend much for no purpose. But he replies, Those who draw up agreements will write my name. Do you then stand by those who read them and say to such persons, It is I whose name is written there? And if you can now be present on all such occasions, what will you do when you are dead? My name will remain. Write it on a stone, and it will remain. But come, what remembrance of you will there be beyond Nicopolis? But I shall wear a crown of gold. If you desire a crown at all, take the crown of roses and put it on, for it will be more elegant in appearances. Against those who wish to be admired. When a man holds his proper station in life, he does not gape after things beyond it. Man, what do you wish to happen to you? I am satisfied if I desire and avoid conformably to nature. If I employ movements toward and from an object as I am by nature formed to do, and purpose and design and assent. Why then do you strut before us as if you had swallowed a spit? My wish has always been that those who meet me should admire me, and those who follow me should exclaim, Oh, the greatest philosopher! Who are they by whom you wish to be admired? Are they not those of whom you used to say that they are mad? Well then, do you wish to be admired by madmen? On precognitions. Precognitions are common to all men, and precognition is not contradictory to precognition. For who of us does not assume that good is useful and eligible, and in all circumstances that we ought to follow and pursue it? And who of us does not assume that justice is beautiful and becoming? When then does the contradiction arise? It arises in the adaptation of the precognitions to the particular cases. When one man says, he has done well, he is a brave man, and another says, not so, but he has acted foolishly, then disputes arise among men. This is the dispute among the Jews and the Syrians and Egyptians and the Romans. Not whether holiness should be preferred to all things, and in all cases should be pursued, but whether it is holy to eat pig's flesh or not holy. You will find this dispute also among Agamemnon and Achilles, for call them forth. What do you say, Agamemnon? Ought not that to be done which is proper and right? Certainly. Well, what do you say, Achilles? Do you not admit that what is good ought to be done? I do, most certainly. Adapt your preconditions then to the present matter. Here the dispute begins. Agamemnon says, I ought not to give up Chrysis to her father. Achilles says, you ought. It is certain that one of the two makes a wrong adaptation of the precognition of ought or duty. Further, Agamemnon says, Then if I ought to restore Chrysis, is it fit that I take his prize from some of you? Achilles replies, Would you then take her from whom I love? Yes, her whom you love. Must I then be the only man who goes without a prize, and must I be the only man who has no prize? Thus the dispute begins. What then is education? Education is the learning how to adapt the natural precognitions to the particular things conformably to nature, and then to distinguish that of things of some are in our power, but others are not. In our power are will and all acts which depend on the will. Things not in our power are the body, the parts of the body, possessions, parents, brothers, children, country, and generally all with whom we live in society. In what then should we place the good? To what kind of things shall we adapt it? To the things which are in our power? Is not health then a good thing, and soundness of limb and life? And are not children and parents and country? Who will tolerate you if you deny this? Let us then transfer the notion of good to these things. Is it possible then, when a man sustains damage and does not obtain good things, that he can be happy? It is not possible. And can he maintain toward society a proper behavior? He cannot. For I am naturally formed to look after my own interest. If it is my interest to have an estate in the land, it is my interest also to take it in from my neighbor. If it is in my interest to have a garment, it is in my interest also to steal it from the bath. This is the origin of wars, civil commotions, tyrannies, and conspiracies. And how shall I be able to maintain my duty towards Zeus? For if I sustain damage and am unlucky, he takes no care of me. And what is he to me if he cannot help me? And further, what is he to me if he allows me to be in the condition in which I am? I now begin to hate him. Why then do we build temples? Why set up statues to Zeus, as well as to evil demons, such as to fever? And how is Zeus the savior, and how the giver of rain and the giver of fruits? And in truth, if we place the nature of good in any such things, all this follows. What should we do then? This is the inquiry of the true philosopher, who is in labor. Now I do not see what the good is nor the bad. Am I not mad? Yes, but suppose that I place the good somewhere among the things which depend on the will. All will laugh at me. There will come some gray head wearing many gold rings on his finger, and he will shake his head and say, "Here, my child, it is right that you should philosophize, but you ought to have some brains also. All this that you're doing is silly. You learn the syllogism from philosophers, but you know how to act better than philosophers do. Man, why then do you blame me if I know? What shall I say to the slave? If I am silent, he will burst. I must speak in this way. Excuse me, as you would excuse lovers. I am not my own master. I am mad." How should we struggle with circumstances? It is circumstances that which show what men are. Therefore, when a difficulty fails upon you, remember that God, like a trainer of wrestlers, has matched you with a rough young man. For what purpose, you may say? Why, that you may become an Olympic conqueror. But it is not accomplished without sweat. In my opinion, no man has had a more profitable difficulty than you have had, if you choose to make use of it as an athlete would deal with a young antagonist. We are now sending a scout to Rome, but no man sends a cowardly scout, who, if he only hears a noise and sees a shadow anywhere, comes running back in terror, and reports that the enemy is close at hand. So now if you should come and tell us, fearful is the state of affairs at Rome, terrible is death, terrible is exile, terrible is calumny, terrible is poverty, fly, my friends, the enemy is near. We shall answer, begone, prophesy for yourself. We have committed only one fault, that we sent such a scout. Diogenes, who was sent as a scout before you, made a different report to us. He says that death is no evil, for neither is it base. He says that fame is the noise of madmen. And what has this spy said about pain, about pleasure, and about poverty? He says that to be naked is better than any purple robe, and to sleep on the bare ground is the softest bed. And he gives us as proof of each thing that he affirms his own courage, his tranquility, his freedom, and the healthy appearance and compactness of his body. There is no enemy near, he says, all is peace. How so, Diogenes? See, he replies, if I am struck, if I have been wounded, if I have fled from any man. This is what a scout ought to be. But you come to us and tell us one thing after another. Will you not go back and you will see clearer when you have laid aside fear? On the same, if these things are true, and if we are not silly and are not acting hypocritically when we say that the good of man is in the will, and the evil too, and that everything else does not concern us, why are we still disturbed? Why are we still afraid? The things about which we have been busied are in no man's power, and the things which are in the power of others we care not for. What kind of trouble have we still? But give me directions. Why should I give you directions? Has not Zeus given you directions? Has he not given you what is your own, free from hindrance and free from impediment? And what is not your own, subject to hindrance and impediment? What directions then, what kind of orders did you bring when you came from him? Keep by every means what is your own. Do not desire what belongs to others. Fidelity is your own. Virtuous shame is your own. Who then can take these things from you? Who else than yourself will hinder you from using them? But how do you act? When you seek what is not your own, you lose that which is your own. Having such promptings and commands from Zeus, what kind do you still ask from me? Am I more powerful than he? Am I more worthy of confidence? But if you observe these, do you want any others besides? Well, but he has not given these orders, you will say. Produce your precognitions, produce these proofs of philosophers, produce what you have often heard, and produce what you have said yourself, produce what you have read, produce what you have meditated on, and you will then see that all these things are from God. If I have set my admiration on the poor body, I have given myself up to be a slave. If on my poor possessions, I also make myself a slave. For I immediately make it plain with what I may be caught, as if the snake draws in his head. I tell you to strike that part of him which he guards. And do you be assured that whatever part you choose to guard, that part of your master will attack. Remembering this, whom will you still flatter or fear? But I should like to sit where the senators sit. Do you see that you are putting yourself in straits? You are squeezing yourself? How then shall I see well any other way in the amphitheater? Man, do not be a spectator at all, and you will not be squeezed. Why do you give yourself trouble? Or wait a little, when the spectacle is over, seat yourself in the place reserved for the senators and sun yourself. For remember this general truth, that it is we who squeeze ourselves, who put ourselves in straits, that is, our opinions squeeze us and put us in straits. For what is it to be reviled? Stand by a stone and revile it, and what will you gain? If then a man listens like a stone, what profit is there to the reviler? But if the reviler has as a stepping stone the weakness of him who is reviled, then he accomplishes something. Strip him. What do you mean by him? Lay hold of his garment. Strip it off. I have insulted you. Much good may it do you. This was the practice of Socrates. This was the reason why he always had one face. But we choose to practice and study anything rather than the means by which we shall be unimpeded and free. You say philosophers talk paradoxes, but are there no paradoxes in the other arts? Then what is more paradoxical than to puncture a man's eye in order that he may see? If anyone said this to a man ignorant of the surgical art, would he not ridicule the speaker? Where is the wonder, then, if in philosophy also many things which are true appear paradoxical to the inexperienced? In how many ways appearances exist, and what aids we should provide against them? Appearances are to us in four ways, for either things appear as they are, or they are not, and do not even appear to be, or they are, and do not appear to be, or they are not, and yet appear to be. Further, in all these cases, to form a right judgment, to hit the mark, is the office of an educated man. But whatever it is that annoys us, to that we ought to apply remedy. If the sophisms of Pyrrho and of the academics are what annoys, we must apply the remedy to them. If it is the persuasion of appearances by which some things appear to be good, when they are not good, let us seek a remedy for this. If it is habit which annoys us, we must try to seek aid against habit. What aid, then, can we find against habit? The contrary habit. You hear the ignorant say, that unfortunate person is dead, his father and mother overpowered with sorrow. He was cut off by an untimely death and in a foreign land. Hear the contrary way of speaking. Tear yourself from these expressions. Oppose to one habit the contrary habit, to sophistry oppose reason. An exercise and discipline of reason against persuasive appearances, we ought to have manifest precognitions, cleared of all impurities and ready to hand. When death appears an evil, we ought to have this rule in readiness, that it is fit to avoid evil things, and that death is a necessary thing. For what shall I do, and where shall I escape it? Suppose that I am not Sarpedon, the son of Zeus, nor able to speak in this noble way. I will go, and I am resolved either to behave bravely myself, or to give another the opportunity of doing so. If I cannot succeed in doing anything myself, I will not grudge another the doing of something noble. Suppose that it is above our power to act thus. Is it not in our power to reason thus? Tell me where I can escape death. Discover for me the country. Show me the men to whom I must go, whom death does not visit. Discover to me a charm against death. If I have not one, what do you wish me to do? I cannot escape from death. Shall I not escape from the fear of death, but shall I die lamenting and trembling? For the origin of perturbation is this, to wish for something, and that this should happen. This should not happen. Therefore, if I am able to change externals according to my wish, I change them. But if I cannot, I am ready to tear out the eyes of him who hinders me. For the nature of man is not to endure to be deprived of the good, and not to endure the falling into evil. Then at last, when I am neither able to change circumstances nor to tear out the eyes of him who hinders me, I sit down and groan, and abuse whom I can. Zeus and the rest of the gods. For if they do not care for me, what are they to me? Yes, but you will be an impious man. In what respect, then, will it be worse for me than it is now? To sum up, Remember that unless piety and your interest be in the same thing, piety cannot be maintained in any man. Do not these things seem necessary? That we ought not to be angry with men, and what are the small and great things among men? What is the cause of assenting to anything? The fact that it appears to be true. It is not possible, then, to assent to that which appears not to be true. Why? Because this is the nature of the understanding, to incline to the true, to be dissatisfied with the false, and in matters uncertain to withhold assent. What is the proof of this? Imagine, if you can, that it is now night. It is not possible. Take away your persuasion that it is day. It is not possible. Persuade yourself, or take away your persuasion that the stars are even in number. It is impossible. When then any man assents to that which is false, be assured that he did not intend to assent to it as false, for every soul is unwillingly deprived of the truth, as Plato says. But the falsity seemed to him to be true. Well, in acts what have we of the like kind as we have here, truth or falsehood? We have the fit and the not fit, the profitable and the unprofitable, that which is suitable to a person and that which is not, and whatever is like these. Can then a man think that a thing is useful to him and not choose it? He cannot. How says Medea? 'Tis true, I know what evil I shall do, but passion overpowers the better counsel. She thought that to indulge her passion and take vengeance on her husband was more profitable than to spare her children. It was so, but she was deceived. Show her plainly that she is deceived, and she will not do it. But so long as you do not show it, what can she follow except that which appears to herself? Nothing else. Why then are you angry with the unhappy woman, that she has been bewildered about the most important things, and has become a viper instead of a human creature? And why not, if it is possible, rather pity as we pity the blind and lame, so those who are blinded and maimed in the faculties which are supreme? Whoever then clearly remembers this, that to man the measure of every act is the appearance, whether the thing appears good or bad. If good, he is free from blame. If bad, himself suffers the penalty. For it is impossible that he who is deceived can be one person, and he who suffers another person. Whoever remembers this will not be angry with any man, and will not be vexed at any man, and will not revile or blame any man, nor hate nor quarrel with any man. So then all these great and dreadful deeds have this origin in the appearance. Yes, this origin and no other. The Iliad is nothing else than appearance and the use of appearances. It appeared to Alexander to carry off the wife of Menelaus. It appeared to Helen to follow him. If then it had appeared to Menelaus to feel that it was a gain to be deprived of such a wife, what would have happened? Not only would the Iliad have been lost, but the Odyssey also. On so small a matter then did such great things depend. But what do you mean by such great things? Wars and civil commotions and the destruction of many men and cities? And what great matter is this? Is it nothing? But what great matter is the death of many oxen and many sheep and many nests of swallows or storks being burnt or destroyed? Are these things then like those? Very like. Bodies of men are destroyed, and the bodies of oxen and sheep. The dwellings of men are burnt, and the nests of storks. What is there in this great dread? What is there in this, great or dreadful? Or show me what is the difference between a man's house and a stork's nest, as far as each is a dwelling, except that man builds his little houses of beams and tiles and bricks, and the stork builds them of sticks and mud. Are a stork and a man then like things? What say you? What say you? In body they are very, very much alike. Does a man then differ in no respect from a stork? Don't suppose that I say so, but there is no difference in these matters. In what then is the difference? Seek and you will find that there is a difference in another matter. See whether it is not in a man the understanding of what he does. See if it is not in social community, in fidelity, in modesty, in steadfastness, in intelligence. Where then is the great good and evil in men? It is where the difference is. If the difference is preserved and remains fenced round, and neither modesty is destroyed, nor fidelity, nor intelligence, then the man also is preserved. But if any of these things is destroyed and stormed like a city, then the man too perishes, and in this consist the great things. Alexander, you say, sustained great damage when the Hellenes invaded, when they ravaged Troy, when his brothers perished. But by no means, for no man is damaged by an action which is not his own. But what happened at that time was only the destruction of Stork's nest. Now the ruin of Alexander was when he lost the character of modesty, fidelity, regard to hospitality, and to decency. When was Achilles ruined? Was it when Patroclus died? Not so. But it happened when he began to be angry, when he wept for a girl, when he forgot that he was at Troy, not to get mistresses, but to fight. These things are the ruin of men. This is being besieged. This is the destruction of cities. When right opinions are destroyed, when they are corrupted. On constancy. The being of the good is a certain will. The being of the bad is a certain kind of will. What then are externals? Materials for the will, about which the will being conversant shall obtain its own good or evil. How shall it obtain the good? If it does not admire the materials, for the opinions about the materials, if the opinions are right, make the will good. But perverse and distorted opinions make the will bad. God has fixed this law, and he says, if you would have anything good, receive it from yourself. You say, no, but I will have it from another. Do not so, but receive it from yourself. Therefore, when the tyrant threatens and calls me, I say, whom do you threaten? If he says, I will put you in chains, I say, you threaten my hands and my feet. If he says, I will cut off your head, I reply, you threaten my head. If he says, I will throw you into prison, I say, you threaten the whole of this poor body. If he threatens me with banishment, I say the same. Does he then not threaten you at all? If I feel that all these things do not concern me, he does not threaten me at all. But if I fear any of them, it is I whom he threatens. Whom then do I fear? The master of what? The master of things which are in my own power? There is no such master. Do I fear the master of things which are not in my power? And what are these things to me? Do you philosophers then teach us to despise kings? I hope not. Who among us teaches to claim against them the power over things which they possess? Take my poor body, take my property, take my reputation, take those who are about me. If I advise any persons to claim these things, they may truly accuse me. Yes, but I intend to command your opinions also. And who has given you this power? How can you conquer the opinion of another man? By applying terror to it, he replies, I will conquer it. Do you not know that opinion conquers itself and is not conquered by another? But nothing else can conquer will except the will itself. For this reason, too, the law of God is most powerful and most just, which is this. Let the stronger always be superior to the weaker. 10 are stronger than 1. For what? For putting in chains, for killing, for dragging whither they choose, for taking away what a man has. The 10, therefore, conquer the 1 in this in which they are stronger. And what then are the 10 weaker? If the 1 possesses right opinions and the others do not. Well then, can the 10 conquer in this matter? How is it possible? If we were placed in the scales, must not the heavier draw down the scale on which it is? How strange then that Socrates should have been so treated by the Athenians. Slave, why do you say Socrates? Speak of the thing as it is. How strange that the poor body of Socrates should have been carried off and dragged to prison by stronger men, and that anyone should have given hemlock to the poor body of Socrates, and that it should breathe out the life. Do these things seem strange? Do they seem unjust? Do you on account of these things blame God? Had Socrates then no equivalent for these things? Where then for him was the nature of good? Whom shall we listen to, you or him? And what does Socrates say? Anitis and Miletus can kill me, but they cannot hurt me. And further, he says, if it so pleases God, so let it be. But show me that he who has the inferior principles overpowers him who is superior in principles. You will never show this, nor come near showing it, for this is the law of nature and of God, that the superior shall always overpower the inferior. In what? In that which it is superior. One body is stronger than another. Many are stronger than one. The thief is stronger than he who is not a thief. This is the reason why I also lost my lamp, because in wakefulness the thief was superior to me. But the man bought the lamp at this price. For a lamp he became a thief, a faithless fellow, and like a wild beast. This seemed to him a good bargain. Be it so, but a man who has seized me by the cloak, and is drawing me to the public place. Then others bawl out, Philosopher, what has been the use of your opinions? See, you are dragged to prison, you are going to be beheaded. And what system of philosophy could I have made so that if a stronger man should have laid hold of my cloak, I should not be dragged off? That if 10 men should have laid hold of me and cast me into prison, I should not be cast in? Have I learned nothing else then? I have learned to see that everything which happens, if it be independent of my will, is nothing to me. I may ask, if you have not gained by this, why then do you seek advantage in anything else than in that which you have learned that advantage is? Will you not leave the small arguments about these matters to others, to lazy fellows, that they may sit in a corner and receive their sorry prey, or grumble that no one gives them anything? And will you not come forward and make use of what you have learned? For it is not these small arguments that are wanted now. The writings of the Stoics are full of them. What then is the thing which is wanted? A man who shall apply them, one who by his acts shall bear testimony to his words. Assume, I entreat you, this character, that we may no longer use in the schools the examples of the ancients, but may have some examples of our own. To whom then does the contemplation of these matters belong? To whom who has leisure? For man is an animal that loves contemplation. But it is shameful to contemplate these things as runaway slaves do. We should sit as in a theatre, free from distraction, and listen to one time to the tragic actor, at another time to the lute player, and not do as slaves do. As soon as the slave has taken his station, he praises the actor and at the same time looks around. Then if anyone calls out his master's name, the slave is immediately frightened and disturbed. It is shameful for philosophers thus to contemplate the works of nature. For what is a master? Man is not the master of man, but death is, and life and pleasure and pain. For if he comes without these things, bring Caesar to me, and you will see how firm I am. But when he shall come to with these things, thundering and lightning, and when I am afraid of them, what do I do then except to recognize my master like the runaway slave? But so long as I have any respite from these terrors, as a runaway slave stands in the theatre, so do I. I bathe, I drink, I sing, but all this I do with terror and uneasiness. But if I shall release myself from my masters, that is from those things by means of which my masters are formidable, what further trouble have I? What master have I still? What then ought we to publish these things to all men? No, but we ought to accommodate ourselves to the ignorant, and to say, this man recommends to me that which he thinks is good for himself. I excuse him. For Socrates also excused the jailer who had the charge of him in prison, and was weeping when Socrates was going to drink the poison, and said, how generously he laments over us. Does he then say to the jailer that for this reason we have sent away the women? No, but he says it to his friends who were able to hear, and he treats the jailer as a child. That confidence is not inconsistent with caution. The opinion of the philosophers perhaps seems to be a paradox, but still let us examine as well as we can if it is true that it is possible to do everything both with caution and with confidence. For caution seems to be in a manner contrary to confidence, and contraries are in no way consistent. That which seems to many to be a paradox in this matter under consideration, in my opinion, is of this kind. If we asserted that we ought to employ caution and confidence in the same things, men might justly accuse us of bringing together things which cannot be united. But now, where is the difficulty in what is said? For if these things are true, which have been often said and often proved, that the nature of good is in the use of appearances, and the nature of evil likewise, and that things independent of our will do not admit either the nature of evil or of good, what paradox do the philosophers assert if they say that where things are not dependent of the will, there you should employ confidence, but where they are dependent on the will, there you should employ caution? For if the bad consists in the bad exercise of the will, caution not only to be used where things are dependent on the will, but if things independent of the will and not in our power are nothing to us, with respect to these we must employ confidence, and thus we shall both be cautious and confident, and indeed confident because of our caution. For by employing caution towards things which are really bad, it will result that we shall have confidence which respect to things that are not so. We are then in the condition of deer, when they flee from the huntsman's feathers in fright. Whither do they turn, and whit do they seek refuge as safe? They turn to the nets, and thus they perish, by confounding things which are objects of fear with things that they ought not to fear. Thus we also act. In what cases do we fear? In things which are independent of the will. In what cases, on the contrary, do we behave with confidence, as if there were no danger? In things dependent on the will. To be deceived, then, or to act rashly or shamelessly, or with base desire to seek something, does not concern us at all, if we only hit the mark in things which are independent of our will. But where there is death or exile or pain or infamy, there we attempt to run away. There we are struck with terror. Therefore, as we may expect it to happen with those who err in the greatest matters, we convert natural confidence into audacity, desperation, rashness, shamelessness, and we convert natural caution and modesty into cowardice and meanness, which are full of fear and confusion. For if a man should transfer caution to those things in which the will may be exercised and the acts of the will, he will immediately, by willing to be cautious, have also the power of avoiding what he chooses. But if he transfer it to the things which are not in his power and the will, and attempt to avoid the things which are not in the power of others, he will of necessity fear. He will be unstable, he will be disturbed, for death or pain is not formidable, but the fear of pain or death. For this reason we commend the poet who said, not death is evil, but a shameful death. Confidence, then, ought to be employed against death, and caution against the fear of death. But now we do the contrary, and employ against death the attempt to escape, and to our opinion about it we employ carelessness, rashness, and indifference. These things Socrates properly used to call tragic masks, for as to children masks appear terrible and fearful from inexperience, we also are affected in like manner by events, for no other reason than children are by masks. For what is a child? Ignorance. What is a child? Want of knowledge. For when a child knows these things, he is in no way inferior to us. What is death? A tragic mask. Turn it and examine it. See, it does not bite. The poor body must be separated from the spirit either now or later, as it was separated from it before. Why then are you troubled if it be separated now? For if it is not separated now, it will be separated afterwards. Why? That the period of the universe may be completed, for it has need of the present, and of the future, and of the past. What is pain? A mask. Turn it and examine it. The poor flesh is moved roughly, then on the contrary, smoothly. If this does not satisfy you, the door is open. If it does, bear, for the door ought to be open for all occasions, so we have no trouble.